Paul Atkins will not become the chairman of the SEC. Is that really possible? I found an article on that and I will now comment on it. Additionally, one can now bring forward some geopolitical tensions. So anyone who has been following the charts since the weekend should be saying, what's going on there? Happening? So we are looking at all the economic data that will be important this week, and quite a bit could happen. And whether the bottom has finally been reached or if it could continue upwards. Because in the end, I also have the trading setup for you. So let's not waste any time. We'll see each other after the intro. Now new, Uptrender VIP Trading, your opportunity to copy the signals of 2 profit traders for free. They managed to grow an account from $4,000 to $30,000 within 2 months. The results in the group are also impressive. All you need for this is a deposit of $100 into your BingX account. You can find all further information below in the description. Yes, I probably don't tell most people anything new. It's really wild right now. Of course, it's Tron again, the typical outperformer in a red bloodbath, led by Bitcoin in terms of all other Bitcoin. We don't need to look into this more deeply. Let's rather look at the reasons now. Or, first of all, since we are at the end of the month, here is March, which unfortunately isn't exactly starting off so gloriously upward compared to February, where we already had a positive movement, but of course everyone was hoping here. Yes, the green candles will come, especially when a legal dispute with Ripple is resolved. Yes, the result, we can see it right here, and at this point a big thank you. I know times are tough. No one knows, is the crypto bull run over now? A large part of the people have sold in panic, but you are still in the game. So a big thank you for that. If you want to support my hours of research, my channel a little, it can be done completely quickly and easily at no cost. Just leave a free like now. And if you might be asking yourself, yes, and what is this about? This is about news. Fact-based, honest, neutral, transparent, without hype, plus a daily trading setup. If you're interested in that, you can get it for free. Also become an uptrender. Just a free subscription now. Leave it, plus activate the bell. And then you're also part of the club. And now let's continue. That's why we'll take a look at the economic data and start here tomorrow at 4 p.m. with the JOLTS job openings, or rather the report. This means the open positions in the US job market. If the numbers are better than expected, meaning there are more open positions, then this signals a strong labor market, which in turn could lead the Fed to keep interest rates higher in the long term. Well, that would be the case. Logically, this would be negative for crypto again. Obviously, higher interest rates make risky investments like Bitcoin and the stock market, especially Bitcoin, less attractive. Let's look directly at Wednesday, where we have the ADP employment change at 2:30 p.m. So you can already notice here that there is quite a gap now between the forecast and the previous value. The fact is, it essentially goes back to the same point. If the numbers are better than expected, it means the economy is strong. This in turn increases the likelihood that the Fed will stick to a respective monetary policy. And that in turn fundamentally has a negative impact on crypto because, I won't repeat it, high interest rates are bad. Bitcoin, etc. On Thursday, the initial jobless claims are due. If there are fewer claims than expected, it means the labor market is strong, and that in turn supports a tight monetary policy by the Fed, which ultimately is negative for crypto. And on Friday, we have the US employment report. A strong report means high employment, rising wages, ultimately more inflation and less room for interest rate cuts. And you can probably guess, high interest rates are bad for Bitcoin, crypto, Bitcoin, etc. And if you think that's it, of course not. Trump is in power and we still have some geopolitical tensions here. I can also very well imagine that Nasdaq might start the market today with a certain gap. By the way, we should definitely keep a close eye on what happens today in the traditional markets. A gap like this, which is usually closed again first, and then it continues in the respective directions. However, we have two factors here that could really throw a wrench in the works for us this week. The first issue is the nuclear agreement. If Tehran does not agree to this nuclear agreement or sign it, then targeted airstrikes would be imminent. And that's a clear statement where the traditional markets initially simmer down and say, oh, very dangerous geopolitical tensions, so we're cautious with all these risk assets. And you can notice that again in the stock market, or rather directly on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin. And that's where the small disadvantage comes into play. Crypto and such react 24/7. Whereas the traditional markets are temporarily closed. This can be both a pro and a con, but currently it is definitely negative. And of course, that wasn't all. Next, we can look at the 2nd, April, because that's Liberation Day, and Trump announced he would make it a tariff action day. And that causes quite a bit of nervousness about what statements might possibly be made on this day. Could come. This whole uncertainty is also quite well substantiated here. By the way, because if we look at gold, it's currently shooting from one all-time high to the next, and it's just below that right now, which makes sense. When funds are pulled out of risk assets and a safe haven is sought, then it's gold. The first point of contact. And we can really feel that quite strongly right now. But hey, always draw the positive from it. If Trump really decides to introduce this crypto, or if the Senate agrees to it, then now would be the best opportunity to skim profits from gold and possibly invest in Bitcoin and other assets. And with that, we now come directly to Paul Atkins. Why does it say FTX there now? Well, it's all a bit connected. So first of all, a positive sign. As of the cutoff date, May 30th, a total of $11.4 billion will be paid out to institutional creditors. If you're wondering now, yes, at the moment there was already a payout in the past. Yes, there was, but for all the so-called small investors. So all losses up to that $50,000. Everything above that is considered institutional. And this money has apparently been scraped together and will be paid out. At this point, one might say it could be positive wine, because these institutional investors might then say, yes, hold on, friends, we're reinvesting in crypto. Yes, many had hoped back then that it would be paid out in crypto because in the meantime, for example, Bitcoin or Solana have significantly increased in value since the crash. However, the current value is being paid out now. So that means the dollar value at the time of the crash, when the crypto had its corresponding value. Well, it remains to be seen if anything happens. At least there is no selling pressure. That's the positive side now, because one could also say, well, if crypto were paid out, some winners might cash in. And no, perhaps a little bit is being fed back into the market here, trickling back. But what does this have to do with Paul Atkins? You can see that here. Elizabeth Warren, we remember, the friendly lady who doesn't think much of crypto, has now also attacked Paul Atkins again, or rather suggested that he could be quite susceptible to bribery and therefore might not be suitable as SEC chairman. Because on March 27th, Paul Atkins spoke before the Senate committee. Due to the fact that he doesn't only have supporters, which is somehow logical. I mean, one doesn't only have fans in any case. As a result, the Senate is currently deliberating whether he is suitable for the position or not. The reason for Warren's accusations is simple, explained. Atkins founded the risk consultancy Patamag Global Partners in 2017. This company has advised several crypto firms, including FTX. Now, Atkins has announced that he wants to sell his Patamag shares, but he does not want to disclose who the buyer is or how much these individuals are paying for it. He says, okay, this is according to the White House guidelines, and personally, I don't see anything objectionable about it. Warren is much more explicit, as she now says, yes, it is not insured who then has financial access to the SEC chief, and so on and so forth. So all in all, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Atkins comes to power. However, the entire committee, the entire Senate, is currently deliberating whether he is the right person for the position. At this point, feel free to write in the comments what you think about it, and whether you see the risk of bribery here, or if you rather think, well, Warren just wants to stir things up a bit and create some controversy. And with that, we come directly to the trading setup. By the way, if you're looking for a cool exchange where you can trade without KYC, check out the description. Here is the link to Femix. I show you this openly and transparently in the account that I manage for someone else. If you also want to secure a deposit bonus, when you deposit $100, you get $25 credited to your futures account. And if you deposit $500, even $80. Shall we start directly with Bitcoin? And I can tell you at this point, if you're currently considering opening a position, yes, that can make sense. However, then engage in DCA, because with all the news I've provided you, no one knows whether it will quickly move upwards or rather downwards. Therefore, that remains to be seen at this point. You can also see it here. There's quite a large block down here. I can very well imagine that this area might even be targeted before the opening of the traditional markets. However, quite a bit has also built up here at the top. You can especially see this quite well in the 3-month view. Up here, there's already a substantial block. Clearly, a lot of shorts have moved in there. But it must be said at this point, we are tied to the traditional market. And that, in turn, is tied to the news, which could possibly also come from Trump. And therefore, I would be quite cautious about making a speculation right now. I am also very curious to see what will happen when the traditional markets open. Please note, we had a time change yesterday, which means the markets are back to normal. Starting again at 3:30 p.m. and usually just before that. And also during that time, it can become quite volatile. Now let's take a quick look at the hourly view to give you a slight forecast. It really doesn't look rosy right now, as you can see here. What a surprise. So I've drawn this line, this support area, a long time ago. And if we extend it over here, we can also see the current rejection, fortunately preventing it from going further down. If this is sustainably broken through now, then my next zone would be here. So it gets interesting there. And if that doesn't hold either, yes, you see we are already below the 80K mark, then this block here could certainly be the last major resistance zone. And if that doesn't hold, yes, then it could indeed go significantly further down. What that means for all the Bitcoin, you will be able to answer for yourself. Now let's take a look at Ethereum in the weekly view. So you can clearly see up here is just a big block, which is logical because enough people have opened short positions here. However, I would be quite cautious here because we should first take a look at what happens next. Bitcoin continues. Then we can roughly predict what will happen with Ethereum. Here is a quick look at Ethereum on the 4-hour view. Yes, so you see our symmetrical triangle? Here we have clearly broken through this uptrend. It continued to go down, and right now we are converging at a pretty critical value. And because we are right at the lower point here, and so wow, the path is not far anymore. Down here. So the zone here is clearly broken through. The zone here clearly, wow, bam, down, end of story. And now this is still the last major support area. What else? So I'm happy to provide an update. If it should go further down here, but hey, so friends, that's just how it is with Ethereum right now. Really bad, especially because all the Bitcoin are also tied to it. That's it for today for now. You notice I didn't go deeper into Bitcoin because I would rather take a look at what Bitcoin is doing right now and then react accordingly. Feel free to write in the comments if I should delve deeper into the topic of trading. And otherwise, if you liked the video, it would be super cool if you could leave a quick free like. And finally, I can give you a tip. I published a video yesterday. Here. I think it was a bit misleading. So, I talked about stablecoins like USDC and how they can be frozen. Even on an unhosted wallet. Even on your hardware wallet. Maybe you didn't know that. I went into detail on that. I would take a look at it. Otherwise, we'll see each other tomorrow for the next update. Until then, all the best. Bye.